I'm so happy to see you.
Pilar, same here. Good to see you again.
Well, I know you have a long history with Mexico. I know you even lived in Chiapas for some time. And now you have a book that's been published here in Mexico, translated by the Universidad Iberoamericana. Could you tell us a little bit about that book?
Well, if I could, I'll just show the audience. It's a translation of a book I wrote in English called Moral Capitalism. And the subtitle of the book is, please forgive my Spanish. It's been a long time since I was in Mexico. Cómo reconciliar el interés privado con el bien público. And I want to emphasize the word reconcile, balancing the moral side with the capitalism side.
Well, that's very interesting. And we would really like to know a little bit more about that. And if you could tell us, how can you see that in Mexico? Because as we all know, Mexico has had its ups and downs, and sometimes it's hard to understand moral capitalism in our Mexican environment, in our Mexican country. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Well, it's hard for me as an outsider to really get into the details, but I would like to say this. After many meetings with Mexican colleagues around moral capitalism, first Gustavo de la Torre, who introduced me to Mexico, he passed away sadly. I considered Gustavo a very moral man and a great patriot of Mexico. And then the people who were involved in Aliarse, working on social responsibility. I think in Mexico, as in the United States, we have different values. Our cultures are complex. And some values, I would say, emphasize power over other people. And other values emphasize working with other people, or being we have this expression in English, being a fiduciary, being a trustee of our powers, thinking about what is the impact of my power on other people. Is it all just for me, or is it for them too? It's the stakeholder concept. I think there's a tradition, my own sense, talking with Gustavo, there is a tradition of honor in Mexico, both with the Spanish heritage and the Indigenista heritage. Mm-hmm. I remember, for example, when I was in Chiapas speaking Tzotzil, it's a long, long time ago, and then reading the book Popol Vuh, which is one of the only Maya books to survive. I think the text came from Guatemala, but the story in the Popol Vuh of creation has this concept of, in English, it was translated as self-magnification. I take myself and I magnify myself up to be the most important. And the morality tale of the Maya is don't do that. Mm-hmm. That's not good for you, and it's not good for the community. So I would think, basically, we argue in every person, in every culture, there is the possibility of doing good. Now, sometimes, as we see right now in the Ukraine, Russia, and with Putin, they've invaded, they sent an army into the Ukraine, they're using their power, people are dying, buildings are being blown up. Is that moral? Did they have to do that? My argument is every person has a choice. I believe that we have free will. We can choose to do good, we can choose to do bad. So how do we work inside ourselves? How does each Mexican work inside himself and herself as to finding some meaning and purpose, which helps me, but it also helps the community? Because then I know that my life has more meaning than just me, myself. I mean, the American writer Mark Twain once had a quip that let me live so that when I die, even the undertaker who buries me will feel sorry that in my short passage through life, I have done something which is admirable.
So you would say the own purpose, my purpose, would really contribute to the moral, to the good of all the world, to the common good. Is that what you would say? We all have something to give to this common good?
I would say that very much. And there's And there's some ideas underneath this. There's this concept of, in English, we call it agency or moral agency. It's self-respect. It's having confidence in yourself. It's listening to other people. It's being aware of other people. It's seeing where the intersection is between yourself and other people. And now sometimes you are right in asking other people to help you because you are a good person. I think in the Catholic tradition, it is said that we are all children of God. We all have our, even bad people, right? We all have some kind of dignity. So I can expect others to show their morality towards me. But I need to develop a sense of purpose of myself, finding meaning in life as part of what? A great process. I also know, and I like this very much, in the Catholic tradition of Catholic social teachings, I think it was Saint John Paul II used to write about, we are co-creators with God of what goes on in life. Right? We're very small, right? But we are still co-creators. We can make things better or we can make things worse. And we each have within us, and now there's scientists in the field of sort of neurobiology about how our brain works. And we have chemicals like oxytocin, which make us happier when we are working with other people and not against them.
So how can we find our own purpose? I know, like, you gave us a clue now that working with others can make us be happier and maybe also help us find our purpose. But do you have any other insights for everyone that's here? Like, what can I do to find my purpose?
That is maybe the most difficult question to answer for each person. And I also like the idea very much now of a balance, a middle way. This is an idea that in the West comes from Aristotle. We find this in Buddhism. We find this in the Muslim Quran. We find this in China with Confucius. It's my purpose is somehow a balance. Because if I say my purpose is to do this, and I only listen to myself, then I become a dictator. And that kind of purpose is not helpful. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if I never have any sense of purpose, and all I do is what my mom tells me, my dad tells me, my girlfriend tells me, my wife tells me, my boss tells me, then I'm really not a strong person. So part of finding a purpose is finding values and gaining strength and having courage. Sometimes it helps, I think, to find a role model. Somebody else, somebody in history, somebody in your family who is admirable and who gets things done. And then you start to sort of say, I look around the world, what do I want to fix? I think, Pilar, in your own experience, right? You found a purpose working with the indigenous communities, correct?
Absolutely. I work in a foundation called Fundación León 13, and that really has given me purpose in life, knowing that I can get to know other people, that learning from other cultures, maybe helping them sometimes, and for sure, the people helping me grow, helping me find there's much more that what I have between the walls of my house, knowing there are different people that live different lives, that really has given me purpose. Yeah, absolutely. But then I always have the question, like, how do I know this is my purpose, and how is this contributing to the world? Do you think, like, if everybody could find their own purpose, that will turn into having a better world?
Well, I would go back then to just the question of morality. I don't want everybody just to have a purpose. I would like them to have good purposes.
Absolutely.
Right? Not bad purposes. And many times we talk about self-interest versus morality. And many people in their schools of philosophy, and this is quite true in business. Many people think my purpose is just to make money. My purpose is my self-interest. And I know there's a pattern and a tradition in Mexico of if I have my company and I can drive you out of business because I know a politician, right? I will do that because then I will have more power and I will get more money and my family will be more respected, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we have to be very careful when we use the word purpose. And remember, there are good purposes and there are bad purposes. Some people, I think, when they see the conflict and the tension, they just back away into themselves. And I think that's a mistake. I think you have to step up and you have to recognize you need a purpose to live a good life, a happy life. And as Mark Twain said, when you get to the end of your life, you feel proud of yourself. So you need to find that, but it's not always easy. And there are other traditions, particularly in the Christian church, going back to the story of Adam and Eve, of temptations. The apple for Eve and Adam was a temptation. Money in business is a temptation. Power is a temptation. A strong person, when I say, and I think when we Americans say a person of purpose, we assume that they have risen above temptations. They have found something which is helpful to others, helpful to the general good. They're in balance between their own, we would say, ego needs, egoismo, right? Mm-hmm. Their own ego needs and los otros, and the others. I don't surrender to the others, but at the same time, I don't want to be their boss.
So you touched a very interesting subject here, power, because power could be very good or it could be something that would destroy, like what we're seeing now in Ukraine and what we're seeing in Russia. Could you tell us a little bit more of how can this power be turned into something like the moral aspect of power, and how can we manage power?
Well, these are fundamental questions, and a good education and a good moral education is part of the answer. A lot of it starts, frankly, with families. Is the family happy? Because many people, and we have people who've written psychoanalysis of good people and bad people, like Hitler and this and what went wrong. And now we have seen in our newspapers and on social media, Putin is a madman. Mm-hmm. Putin is a psychotic. Well, is he? And then you immediately go from there to what was his family like? What did he have in America, the big issue is Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. People now analyze Donald Trump. Many people don't like him, and they analyze him because he had a very cold father. Mm-hmm. He had a very harsh father, and he had a very cold mother. So here's a man who probably has tremendous emotional needs. So when he gets power, he likes to use power to bring things back to himself. So we need to think about who we are and where we got our values from. There's another connection I feel, and I'm a lawyer. I'm not an expert in this, between people who feel badly about themselves. They're insecure, they're afraid, they're hurt, they're vulnerable. They tend to misuse power. People who are comfortable with themselves, they tend to use power in good ways. And that also comes back not just to family, but the role of the church and the role of education. Do the churches bring out the best in people? Or sometimes churches can be very strict. And sometimes in my tradition, the Protestant tradition, in the old days, if you always blame the young people for not being good, you got to love God more. They resist that, and they don't actually become better. They get more angry, and anger, I think, is always a pathway to the abuse of power.
Thank you. I think that's very interesting, and that really gets us thinking into where do we want to put our power and what do we want to do with that. But then going back to your book and going back to the moral capitalism, like. In companies, like when we're working, how can we relate this concept of moral capitalism in our daily work or in business?
Well, I think there are two levels to that, Pilar. The first level, and by the way, as you know, this is being talked about today all over the world. We have a new movement, which the Co-Roundtable was one of the first back in 1994. But now we have the World Economic Forum, the U.S. Business Roundtable, the United Nations, trillions of dollars have been pledged to the environment, society, and government without people knowing really what ESG is. But there's some movement going on in the world to bring the benefits of capitalism and minimize the bad side of capitalism. So at the company level, the concept is stakeholders. Who are you, and we have a Japanese concept in the co-roundtable called kyosei, which is literally translated as symbiosis, a biological term. And the idea, which I like a lot, is that a company, like a human being, is a living organism in an environment. And we are in a symbiotic relationship with our environment. We live off the environment and we give back to the environment. Now, I argue in my book that a company is the same way with its stakeholders. It's in a symbiotic relationship with customers, with employees, with the owners, with the community, with the environment. So, for example, imagine you're running a company and you produce something that nobody likes. You have no customers. You're finito, right? You're gone. Nothing. Okay. Second thing, you're running a company and you've got 500 employees and you don't pay them very much money and this, that, and they don't like you and they don't like your product and they're lazy. And if they pick up the phone, they're not very polite. What's going to happen to your company? Probably going to fail. If you're a young graduate of Iberoamericano and you have a great idea for a business and you go to a bank and you ask for money and they don't give you any money, you're not going to start your business. Companies need all these other, if you will, social forces. I call them social capital and human capital and finance capital. So that's at the company level. If you go down the ranks of the company, if you are the, as we in America call the CEO, the president, the senior person, the sole owner, what are your responsibilities to your stakeholders? How do you think about that? If you're down another level, if you're a manager, are you thinking about, let's say you're a manager in operations or you're a manager in marketing. Are you thinking about the company's stakeholders when you make your decisions? Are you making recommendations up the line saying we should improve our product here? I've just learned that something about our product is not helping this particular constituency. What can we do? Marketing, what should we say? Do we tell the whole truth, partial truth? How do we handle reputation? And then with your co-workers, I think the idea is your co-workers are a stakeholder to you and you are a stakeholder to them. So this, in my mind, is a question, again, of balance and good relationship. You need to speak up to them when you disagree. But when they speak up, you need to listen to them too. So I think, again, this notion of moral capitalism is a balance between thinking about others and thinking about making money.
And what about society, and the environment? Because you spoke about the people that work in the company and maybe the more internal part of the company, but society in general and environment. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think here is where it gets complicated for a company, because a company has to make money. If you don't make money, you go out of business, and all your employees, they lose a job. And that affects the employees and their families, right? Mm-hmm. And if you go out of business, let's say you really have a good new idea on the environment. You have a small company and you've got a new idea about how to capture carbon and sequester it. But you go out of business because you're not a good business person. You have no profit. You can't pay back the bank. Then society has been hurt because you failed. So the first thing you have to do is you have to not fail. You have to be able to make some profit, right? Then the next thing is where it gets complicated, I think, is the impact. What are you doing? Because everything has an impact. We have good impacts and we have bad impacts. So I think the next step is you have to investigate and learn about your impacts. One of the things I talk about now, which worries me a lot, is social media, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. We now have lots of studies, and there was sort of a scandal about Facebook here on the negative impact of these things, particularly on young girls between the ages of 10 and 13 and 14, where they get very depressed because of this product, this service, and they get hooked on the service. They spend hours on social media, but they're not happy. They're not building up a good character. They don't feel powerful. To me, that's a bad impact. Okay, now what should we do? Sometimes in society, we pass a law, let's say with guns or alcohol or drugs. We don't want our people to have the choice of buying that product. You cannot make it. Should we do that with social media? Or is it to the corporate responsibility side of the company to realize that their product has some negative impacts and they need to change their product? That gets over to the environment, I think. All these issues of pollution or global warming. If you have a manufacturing, in the old days, 30, 40 years ago, if you had a manufacturing plant somewhere in Mexico, dry country, and there's a very narrow little stream, which then goes into a village, and something comes out of your plant, a bad chemical, and you're just dumping it into the stream, you are maybe ruining crops, you're maybe making babies sick in that village. No, you should stop doing that. Change your technology. Yes, that's an increased expense, but you owe that to society. So it's also invention on the innovative side. One of the things I've been writing about recently is rethinking nuclear power. If the civilization is going to survive and make people more and more wealthy, and we want to have a good atmosphere, a good environment, no global warming, we have to have a lot of energy, but not use hydrocarbons. I think the science and the technology tells us that really it's only nuclear energy can do that. But our current nuclear plants they have dangers, they have negative impacts. So will we as human beings be smart enough to invent new kinds of nuclear power plants which will be safe? So this is a complicated process, Pilar, of thinking about goods and bads.
Yes, that's what got me. I was just thinking on that. Like nothing is good or bad. We have to find a balance, and that's how we started our conversation. We started with balance and purpose. So we just have a few minutes left. What would going back to this idea of balance and purpose? What would be your last message? Something that the young students that are watching us can take home and then maybe start thinking about what they would like to do and how would this purpose help themselves and then will help society and the world.
I think there are a couple of things. First, to build on what I said, is you have to feel good about yourself somehow. So live your life that you feel good about yourself. Because when you feel good about yourself, you can make better decisions and you can guide your will. You are not dominated by your will and your emotions. You can guide it. And what a lot of people say about that, I don't do it very much myself, but a lot of people say it's very good, is reflection. In Buddhism, I talk about meditation. In the Catholic tradition, there's prayer and retreats. I think there's some human process in our mind and our hearts that if we reflect, if we find a time to think about things, what is good, what is bad, what is happening, how am I different, that builds our sense of inner self-confidence and inner acceptance of ourselves, because you have to start with yourself. I think another thing is, and we Americans are not good at this really anymore, don't look to other people to solve your problems. Right? I mean, it's not your mom and dad, it's not your wife, it's not your husband, it's not this, it's not that. You have an internal reservoir of power and strength, which you can bring forward to make you into a very admirable person.
Thank you so much, Steve. I think this really helps us thinking we have to start with ourselves. And as we grow up and as we start doing different things, just keep in mind that we have to be with other people as well. That's not only my purpose, but the way I relate with others that would make a better world. And maybe we would find common good And I think that's the purpose we all want. We want to have a better world. So thank you so much for this conversation. It has been really, really inspiring, and we'll hope to see you back soon. And thank you for showing us your book.
Yes, thank you so much.